Hi internets. This is a second installment video on crystal gazing. So I made a previous video on the closed-eyed technique when crystal gazing. So I want to make this video just to kind of share an experience that I had working with a crystal sphere, and kind of pointing out that you know, in Hollywood, crystal gazing is connected with fortune telling, or you could say divination, which it is. It's an amazing tool for divination, but that's not all that crystal gazing is. I mean, crystal gazing, the information that we can receive from our own intuition through the crystal sphere is truly infinitely varied. So it's not bound to just divination. So I want to share the story that I had with during a crystal gazing session last week, because it kind of shows what we can do with a crystal sphere. So I wrote it down, my experience, because that's probably the most important thing, is to make sure that as soon as you finish a session of crystal gazing that you write down what happened with as much detail as you can remember, because when we are engaging that intuitive faculty of our brain, it's much like a dream. When we wake up in the morning after a dream that was so vivid and clear, I mean, it escapes our mind in just a matter of minutes. Same thing, we're going into the same mental processes when we're crystal gazing. So much like dreaming, when we finish crystal gazing, we have to write down what we saw, otherwise we'll forget it, and that would make the whole practice pretty pointless. So I wrote down this experience, so I'm going to kind of have some notes here. So this specific experience, I was laying in bed, so a lot of times I'll go to bed, and this sounds weird, but sometimes I'll sleep with my crystal ball. I mean, it is quartz crystal, so it has a very positive healing energy, so I sleep with it because it gives me allows me to go to sleep really quickly and helps me de-stress, and so before I go to bed, I'll usually spend 10-15 minutes working actively and passively with my crystal sphere. So this was the experience I had. So I was laying in bed and I picked up my crystal sphere, and was just a lot of times I'll just be open just to see what comes up. And what came up was like a negative feedback loop, which is what I call it anyway. And it's where when you're in a conscious, before you sink down into trance or subconscious mind or the levels of intuition, whatever you want to call it, when you're still in your conscious mind, sometimes I'll get a negative feedback loop. So the conscious thoughts, which are usually, can be good, but sometimes like our self-doubt, all of those conscious thoughts can reverberate in the crystal sphere and like come back to us. So it's like a negative feedback loop. So for example, I was getting all this kind of just negative garbage, negative self-talk, because I was still in my conscious mind, and so it's like a feedback loop. So to clear that, I brought in an energy into the sphere. So I used Archangel Gabriel, because Gabriel, amongst many things, can really help us with things of an intuitive nature. I associate Gabriel with water, so intuition, so many things, but intuition being one of them. So I conjured, invited, whatever, Gabriel into the sphere. With the prayer, Gabriel come into the sphere, and then I instantly felt the shift in energy of the sphere to a much more positive vibration. So after calling Gabriel into the sphere, I said, how can I be of service to life? Show me something that reflects how it can be of service. So I just left it very open, like wanting a beneficial experience. And instantly, I got crystal clear movie vision with my eyes closed, in my mind's eye, of a young black man a slave. So a few hundred years ago, a couple hundred years ago, 100 years ago, I'm terrible with history. But a young black slave, white work shirt, tannish colored overalls, and very graphic. He had a metal like railroad spike stuck through his leg, which then went into like a big wooden support beam of like an old house structure. And the beam had like fallen. So I don't know. In hindsight, I'm wondering if there was some kind of tornado or something, and he was just stuck there. And it could be, like I said in my last video, our intuition speaks in symbols. So I can't say like, oh, this is a young man who died because he was like nailed to a wooden post in the house collapse or something. I don't know. It could be a symbol. But what I saw was him with a huge, and I got this up close angle shot, much like a movie, of the nail driven through his leg. And it was very bloody, very gruesome. But while he was nailed to this wooden post, he was frantically trying to get away, trying to run, which was like ripping at this nail, which looked very painful. But he was so desperate to get away that he was doing anything to get away. So that could say a lot right there, interpreting that experience that man was going through. But I instinctively knew that this was an earthbound spirit, a ghost, whatever you want to call it, and realized that I could, in that moment, help release that spirit. So there's a lot of great movement in the modern psychotherapist world, and there's a lot of good research about spirit releasement therapy. So how entities, ghosts, whatever, why they don't move on to the light after they die, but they'll attach to certain people, places, whatever. And through this therapy, you can help release those spirits into the light, which will then clear them out of a house, a space, or clear a negative attachment they've made on a living human being. So I recognize that this was an opportunity for spirit releasement therapy, which I've had a few of these experiences, and they're always really powerful and really quick. So I instinctively knew I needed to reach my hand out for him. So I reached my hand out, and he saw me, he recognized me, and so he started reaching his hand towards me, and I immediately got this knowing that he was going to try to pull me into his world, pull me into something. I don't know what would have happened if I were to have been pulled into whatever he was pulling me into. I knew that, I got that insight right before we met hands. So when we met hands, I felt him pull, but I was prepared, so I just kind of almost ripped him up in an upward motion. And then as soon as I did that, the scene switched to us soaring up through a luminous white tunnel, flying up, and I was leading and like holding on to him, pulling him up. And I kept looking back, and he would just look bewildered with the whole experience. And we were just moving quicker and quicker and quicker. And then while I was holding his hand, it was like an empathic link with him, so I could feel his experience. And I could feel that he was getting ready to like pass out, go unconscious, because it was just all this energy, all this whole experience was overwhelming to his system. So I look back, and then I see him go unconscious. And in that moment, we are transported into an infinite space, seeming no more. I couldn't see anything. Everything was just white, and it felt infinite, and it was very quiet. So maybe at the gates of heavenly realms, whatever you want to say. It was just white emptiness, and we weren't moving anymore. We were just present. And I couldn't see him. It was just white, but I felt his presence there, and his energy was drastically different. So much at peace. And I heard him say, "It doesn't hurt anymore." I'm assuming referring to that spike in his leg, and a lot of other things. And in that moment, I knew I needed to kind of like, didn't really know where he was at, so I was supposed to comfort him. So I said, "You're right, it doesn't hurt anymore." And I said, this is the home of the Creator, the God that you worshipped in your human form. This is that place. And he paused, and he said, "So peaceful here." I said, yes, it is filled with God's presence because it is his home. Um, and then I asked him, I said, are you ready to go meet the maker, meet your creator? And all of this was coming out very just intuitively. I wasn't thinking about what I'm going to say, just all came out. And I felt a hesitation with him. And he was silent. And then he said, well, something to the effect of, will I be deemed worthy in God's eyes? He was afraid that he wouldn't be worthy and he would be cast out or something. And the answer just came instantly to me, which was so beautiful. And the answer was, God is only love. There is nothing but love. So be not afraid. There's no such thing as being unworthy in his presence. And I felt his energy just relax. And then what happened next was really strange because it's all white. I can't see anything but white. But it felt like I loaded him into some kind of gigantic slingshot catapult. And he was engaging in that process, and he got in, and I was letting him go, and I couldn't see because it was all white, but I felt him shooting up into this whiteness. And then there was this door or portal or something that opened up in the infinite whiteness, and through that door, which he passed through, was another realm of infinite just white, but this one had a noticeable distinction in that white was luminous. So it was like a little portal in all white, in an all white realm, and through that portal was another all white realm, but it was just this luminous, almost like this purple shimmeringness on that made up that whiteness. And so he launches through this portal, and as soon as he did, I felt our line of communication get very scrambled, very staticky. I couldn't hear or feel what he was expressing, but I heard him say something to the effect of how he felt at home. He said, this is home. This is what home feels like. And his voice, his energy, it's hard to describe, put into words what that experience is like, but I guess you could say his voice was filled with just so much warmth and ease and peace, and he was home. And it was really beautiful. And then the experience was over. My eyes pop open. I'm like, what? That was incredible. And some people may say oh, wow, you have an overactive imagination, and that's what it was. But, I would like to think that my mind is capable, which it is, I guess, in some regard. But I would like to think that I could imagine something like that. But the experience, having just been so open to say, Gabrielle, bring me something that bring me something that allows me to be a benefit in some way. I mean, that was the answer I received, which was exactly, in hindsight, what I was the experience I was seeking. But in the moment, I was just so open, and seeing him in that room was just instant, and it was so clear. It was a movie. And like I said in my previous video, I don't innately have strong visualization skills, which lets me know that this was an experience outside of myself. And it was beautiful, because, earthbound spirits are everywhere. They're stuck, and they are in a place of confusion, and that confusion doesn't allow them to move to the light. So somebody's got to help them. So if you are a crystal gazer or a intuitive, a medium, a psychic, I mean, there's a big tall order for those of us who can be helpers in that way to help release these earthbound spirits into the light so that they can continue on with their spiritual journey. Because I would hope that for some reason, if I got stuck at the moment of my death, knock on wood, I hope that doesn't happen, that there would be somebody who could help lead me to that light. So it was a beautiful experience, and that night, right before I went to sleep, I was just basking in just gratitude for that experience. It was very intense, profound, and beautiful, and it was amazing. I still have goosebumps and gratitude and all this good, awesome feeling towards that experience. So yeah, that's one of the many things that these crystal spheres can help us do. They are just links to um, the unseen, and the unseen is a very vast place with a very vast amount of experience to be had there. But so spirit releasement with a crystal ball, absolutely. A lot of times spirit releasement therapists will work with a medium, but with a crystal sphere, and if you have any basic intuition, you can just work with yourself in the crystal sphere to do spirit releasement therapy. Just make sure that you are inviting in angels for protection, because when you're working actively with spirits, that's my disclaimer, do not go in doing this unless you feel like you have feel like you're called to do it, and also feel like you have to have, you know, some spiritual force on your side to protect you in those realms, because spirits attach to physical beings so easily. I mean, there's some study that says that like 75% of humanity people have had a spirit attachment at one point or another, or they may currently have one. But it's just, when you don't know that that's a possibility of experience, you don't even know what is going on with you, but you know that something seems off. Okay, now I'm rambling. So I just want to make this video. I hope you get something from it, and I would love to hear your comments and hear what you think about it. It's a very noble work to be doing, spirit releasement therapy. The crystal ball makes it a lot easier to do that work. So anyway, hope you are having a lovely day wherever it is that you are, whoever it is that you are. And I just wish a lot of good things in your life now and in your life to come. Okay, I'm out of here.